So I invite you down, Nay, if you'd like to lead it. Let us listen to your wonderful music.
Ahmet Hocam çalmak ister misiniz? Ahmet Bey, Nezen abi, neyi üflemek ister misiniz?
Başlıyor mu program şu anda yoksa?
Sizi dinlemek istiyorlar şu anda.
Okey.
Thank you.
I have played as Hijaz, Makam Hijaz.
Right. Thank you, Nay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
And I want to say Salam Alaikum, Alaikum Salam, Ramadan Mubarak. My name is John Joseph Massandrea. I'm a minister here at Manor Road United Church.
Right.
And it's an honor to be here as we gather and patience as we navigate as we use Zoom platform. And we're going to hear more music much later. And here's Cole Sadler, welcome. And I will now join us as we honor our land, as we read the Acknowledgement of Territory. As we gather for this night of worship of Iftar dinner, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional home of the Wendat, the Tinanate, also known as the Batoon and the First Nations, collectively known as the Neutrals. We also gather upon the current home of the Mississaugas, and over generations, this territory has become home to many First Nations people, Métis, Inuit, settler, and immigrant peoples. We strive to seek justice and walk in right relation with all peoples on Turtle Island. May we be connected to the heartbeat of the Spirit as one. Now, just an thank you all who helped to make this between the person who made the flyers and Nay. And so if we look at an overview, we're going to have Ramadan 101, and we're going to hear about the meal we would have shared, which is always a tempting way to see what treasures we would have experienced. And then we'll be hearing a little bit later from our own Marianne, Eschker, Green Team Whisperer or Green Goddess, some reduction of single-use plastics, and Muaz Nasir from the Calipha Foundation, and also good friend Michelle Singh from Faith in the Common Good. Now, someone might have a TV in the background. If they could just turn that off, that'd be wonderful. And so I'm going to introduce our illustrious chair of our Executive Council, Suzi Morris. Now, Suzi, what happens is when you speak, we should see your beautiful face. So over to you, Suzi.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you now. Yep.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're fabulous.
Lovely to see you all this evening.
What I'm going to do, so you can actually, maybe by this part, I'll just stop sharing screen so people can actually see each other's faces. Oh, isn't this lovely? There we go.
Lovely to see everybody. Welcome. Really lovely to get to know some new folks, particularly in this strange time when we're all mostly isolating at home. We at Manor Road are always keen to reach out and understand different cultures, different faiths around us, and how we can do our part to be better stewards of the planet that we all share. So really excited to see you all here this evening.
Thank you, Suzi. Let's go back to sharing screen, and we'll go back to this. And then we go hear from our wonderful John Ryerson, who is I want to refer to him as our Noah, our Moses, our Joseph, guiding us as a wonderful layperson in the North Toronto cluster. I'm going to stop sharing so people can see his face. Over to you, John.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be participating in this event tonight. The North Toronto cluster is a United Church cluster of 10 churches, and we've been, as all faith groups, are trying to find ways to work together with each other to get through these challenging times. And it's important that interfaith be part of that process. I also co-chair Faith in the City, and we've been very active with many faith groups around the subject of homelessness in particular, and food, which many of you are, as Imam Wall can speak to, or actively involved in. And so it is a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you for this opportunity to learn together.
Thank you, John. And then we move to Halil Yurtsever, the Executive Director of Intercultural Dialogue Institute. Over to you, Halil.
Okay, yeah. Good day, distinguished guests. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the entire team of Intercultural Dialogue Institute, I would like to extend my warmest welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. Ramadan is the special and holiest month of the year for Muslims throughout the world. During this month, adult and healthy Muslims fast by abstaining from drinking, eating from dawn to sunset, and pay special attention to their piety. Ramadan is a time for inner reflection, devotion to God, self-control, and training to be a better moral person. Muslims think about Ramadan as a kind of tune-up for their spiritual lives. However, apart from being the month of prayers, supplications, and spiritual purification, Ramadan also has a strong social and community aspects. Ramadan is a way of experiencing hunger and developing empathy for the less fortunate, and learning thankfulness and appreciation for all God's bounties. On the other hand, Ramadan is the way of developing a sense of community. People are more generous, more cordial, friendlier, and more ready than other times of the year to do good and charitable work. Muslims often invite their neighbors, friends, colleagues, and one another to share evening meals. Unfortunately, this time we are not sharing it, but hopefully next year. Exchange gifts and best wishes. Breaking fast with people from different cultures and faith traditions is one of these important practices. In fact, it is this interfaith and intercultural dimension of Ramadan which we believe is essential to this evening and to all Ramadan Iftar dinners that our institution has been organizing for the last 5-6 years. Because these events serve as another means of promoting dialogue and building bridges of understanding and peace. In this regard, it is an imperative for all of us as members of truly global community as Toronto GTA to come together around the common values and references while including a variety of our beliefs and practices. At this point, I would like to share the story of IDI with you. The Institute was founded in 2005 with the simple idea of reducing false stereotypes, prejudices, and unjustified fears through direct human communication. Having this in mind, the first activity IDI organized was Interfaith Dinner in the month of Ramadan. Based on the virtue of hospitality and by breaking bread together, we witnessed a huge transformation around us. Therefore, it is important not to underestimate this impact of sharing meal. Actually, it's just an excuse to come together. We would like to also thank you, our partners, John, and for their support to make this important and wonderful event possible. Really, it is important. Our prophet said, if the day of resurrection is about to be established and one of you was holding a palm shoot, let him take advantage of even 1 second before the hour is established and planted. Together, listening and responding with openness and respect, we can move forward to work in ways that acknowledge genuine differences but build on shared hopes and values, to attain peace and to help bring about the long-awaited cooperation of the world civilization. We have a great deal to learn from one another to encourage justice, love, respect, and altruism. With that hope, I would like to thank all of you for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to our icebreaker. Now, the intention of the icebreaker, I'm not sure how practical this will work, but what will probably be more helpful is maybe if we had each person just state their name, and because the idea was to get to know each other, and say which organization you hail from. So let's start, because I'm not sure what order you in. I'm looking. Let's start with you, Muaz, because I'm reading just off my screen, so I'm just guessing what order people are in. Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So my name is Muaz Nasir. I'm from the organization called Calipha.com. We're an environmental organization that promotes environmental sustainability from the Muslim Canadian perspective. We've been running for about almost 10 years now. And the goal of our organization is sort of to promote and share stories within the Muslim community about some of the great initiatives that local mosques, organizations, interfaith initiatives are involved with when it comes to promoting sustainability and environmental awareness. And we collectively put out resource and guides that individual mosques and other organizations can kind of take and implement within their own communities as well. So we've been partnering with various organizations over the last 10 years. Faith in the Common Good is one of them that we've run a couple of events with in the past. And we try to promote outreach within other interfaith initiatives as well, like tonight's event, which is a great sort of timely topic when you're talking about climate change in this era of COVID. Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thank you. And as I move over, I see Michelle on my top of my screen. So I just want to say your name and then where you're from.
I'm Reverend Michelle Singh. I'm an interfaith minister, and I'm the executive director of Faith in the Common Good.
And then we've heard from Halil already. So over to Imam Wa'el Shahab. You want to say your name and then where you're from? Do not unmute yourself. Okay. Ooh, okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be on you all. Thank you very much for having me with your virtual iftar. It's a pleasure to be with you to work together. My name is Wa'el Shahab. I serve as the Imam of the downtown Toronto Mosque.
Okay, thank you. And over to Batul.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Betul. I'm here and an IDI volunteer.
Wonderful. Okay. And we're going to hear from you later, Marianne. I want you to say your name and where you're from. Oh, we got to have her on mute. Okay. Okay. I wonder why she didn't. Okay. Let me, can you unmute yourself, Marianne? Yeah. Sorry,
Yes.
she's a, okay.
Been home with my kids too long.
That's okay.
My name is Marianne. I'm a member of Manor Road United Church, and a while back we started a Green Team initiative at church to address issues at our church and the bigger community, and that's what I'll talk about a little bit later.
Thank you. And familiar face, Karen, you want to just say your name and where you're from?
My name is Karen Scott, and I'm a member of Metropolitan United Church, and I'm also the AD for the Muslim Children's Aid and Support Services in Scarborough.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen. Okay. And John, we already heard from you. And how about over to Esser? Do you want to say your name and then where you're from?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Eschker. I'm from Turkey. I'm a volunteer of Intercultural Dialogue of Institute. I came here around 5 years ago, and I'm really proud to be part of this amazing country.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. And do I say Sinan? Do you want to say your name and where you're from?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Sinan. I'm from Turkey, and I am a volunteer at IDI in interfaith section.
Okay,
thank you.
And Suzi, we heard from you, but where are you from? You're from Manor Road, and anything else you wanted to add? You got to unmute yourself. Okay. Okay. Oh, hold on. Why is it? We can't hear you. Not sure why.
You can hear me now, right?
Perfect. Okay. Yay. Okay.
So yes, I'm a member of Manor Road United Church, and I'm from the UK originally, and have been here in Canada for 10 years.
Okay. Wonderful.
Like US, are very proud to be part of this country.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go down the name list because it's hard. Okay. And I see, hold on, don't want to forget. Betty, we can't see you, but just say your name and where you're from. Yo, Betty, you want to unmute yourself? I guess Betty stepped out of the room. Okay, there we go. Okay. Oh, I know she's ringing her bells outside. That's what she's doing. Yeah, she does that, right?
I'm just back.
Okay, because she knew what I was talking about. See if I talk about it. Okay, all right. Betty rings the bells to the frontline workers, as many of us do at 7:30. Okay, so Betty, just say your name and where you're from.
Okay, my name is Betty Kelman, and I am from Manor Road United Church. I was originally born in South Porcupine, Ontario. Don't laugh. There really is a South Porcupine.
9 hours north of here. Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And then we have, as the crow flies, Cole Sadler. You wanted to say your name and then where you're from. Yo, Cole.
Oh, yeah. Hi, my name is Cole Sadler. I'm from California, and I've lived in Canada for 9 years. I'm a member of Manor Road United Church.
Okay, great. And if we go down the list, we got Halil, and we had Amin, and we had, Milana Dickinson. You want to say your name and where you're from?
Good evening. My name is Milana Dickinson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I've just recently joined Manor Road. I also go to another church, but I'm very honored to be part of this church. It's very exciting. And I'm honored to be here with all these distinguished guests. Thank you for inviting me.
And you're a soul healer. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I do alternative healing.
Good. We can't put a little plug for you. Always important to talk about healing. We can't have enough healing in our world, believe me.
Yes, yes.
Muaz Nasir, can you just give us your name and where you're from?
Yes, this is Manib Nasir. I am the National Co-Chair of the Muslim Christian Liaison Committee, and also a member of Masjid Toronto with Imam Shahid Wael Shihab.
Wonderful. Okay. And then we have Nay, we already heard from you. Okay. And then we have, who's SEO Net?
Hi, John Joseph. This is Oz.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay. And where do you hail from? Are you living in Toronto or outside, or?
Yes, I'm in Toronto. I'm from
okay.
Toronto.
Perfect. Okay, well, good to have you. I didn't expect people to give a big address, but it's just nice to get to know each other. And I'm seeing, did I say Sinan? Did I already say Sinan? Yes, sir. Okay, and I think, oh, Vivian. Say your name and where are you from?
Yes, hi, John
Please.
Joseph. It's Vivian. I am from Toronto, and I guess I've been, doing a lot of interfaith work with you guys for a while, and with Father Damien. Thank you for having me here.
Wonderful.
Congratulations on this interesting event.
Oh, it's somewhat. Yeah, it's interesting. Next year, touch wood, we will have food. Okay, but this year, we imagine what it would be like.
Food this year.
Yeah. Did I leave anybody out? I wouldn't want to leave anybody. Sinan, did I say Sinan's name yet, or no?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
For Imam Wael Shaib. Where is the downtown mosque?
Okay, that's a good one. Oh, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Downtown Toronto Mosque is in Dundas Street. It's between Bay and Street. So it's 168 Dundas Street West.
Oh, wow.
So close to the...
And also at Adelaide, and also at Adelaide and Church. Don't forget that one too.
Yeah, we have two mosques in downtown.
Okay.
So one at Dundas Street West, between Bay and University at 168 Dundas Street West, and the other one is in the Adelaide Street, intersection Adelaide and Church Street, just across of the St. James Cathedral.
So did a person named, is it Ishan? I might be saying that incorrectly. Just pop in if you wanted to say your name and where you're from.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Yes, my name is Ihsan.
Okay. And where do you hail from? In Toronto?
Yeah, in Toronto.
No, I meant like by east, west, north, or south, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's go back to our wonderful program. Okay, here we are.
John Joseph, there's one other person who joined us, Ahad.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having eyes on the screen. Aha, do you want to say your name and where do you hail from in Toronto?
Hello, my name is Ahad. I'm the one and in the Woodbridge. So probably see your career.
Okay, wonderful. Woodbridge, yes, the city above Toronto. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Going to go back to our program and see, that was another form of icebreaker without having to lose everybody's connectivity, which is quite lovely. Okay, I'm going to go over to the next part. And I'm going to introduce again Halil Yurtsever. And now, look, can you then, what I'm going to do is unmute, and then we have two parts. We have Halil of Ramadan 101, and then Batul. Are you still okay to explain what we might have had for dinner? We'll start with Halil. Halil, one second, so we can see his face. There we go. Halil, can we see your, can you just give us, kind of elaborate on Ramadan 101 for those of us who are very curious to hear more about Ramadan, meaning what is Ramadan and why is it important?
Actually, Batul is going to tell you about Ramadan.
Even better. There you go, Batul. Okay, I love that. Okay. You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I want to mention about briefly Ramadan. Fasting Ramadan is one of Islam's foremost pillars, as you know, and greatest symbols. Many of its purposes relate to God's lordship and giving thanks to his bounties, and to humanity's individual and social life, self-training and self-discipline. I'll try to explain a little bit about its purposes in terms of both individual and society. Firstly, I want to mention about individual perspective. One purpose is that God displays his lordship, bounties, and being all merciful and all compassionate upon the earth's surface. He designed the earth's surface as a table to hold his bounties. However, people sometimes cannot really differentiate these situations' reality because of sometimes thoughtfulness and or the causality's blinding veil. However, during Ramadan, believers worship as if they expect to be told to help themselves toward the end of the day. So they respond that's universal mercy with a comprehensive and harmonious act of collective worship. Also, everyone's selfhoods understand that it's owned by one other, not by itself. So it's a servant, it's not a free agent. Unless ordered or permitted, it cannot do even most common things like eating and drinking. And also fasting is a key to Thanksgiving as a fundamental human duty. During Ramadan, during fasting, believers think that as these bounties do not belong to me, I cannot regard them as mere food and drink. So since the one owns and grants them to me, I need to wait his permission to eat them. Also, the true giver of these bounties is infinitely more deserving thanks for these bounties. However, generally we thankful for servants and thank them. So during Ramadan, everyone understands that the real value of these bounties. Another purpose of fasting is that to put people on physical and spiritual diet. If the carnal self acts as it wishes, the people's physical health is harmed, but more importantly, their spiritual life is harmed because they cannot differentiate between the lawful and the unlawful. So during Ramadan, during fasting, fasting accustoms us to dieting and self-discipline. So it is a kind of patience-based training. We feel hungry for 15 or sometimes even 17 hours. Nowadays it's 17 hours. So fasting cures impatience and the lack of endurance. I want a little bit mention about the social part also. Fasting doesn't mean just being hungry. Those who fast should stop their tongue from lying, backbiting, or swearing, and busy with reciting Quran, glorifying God, seeking for His forgiveness. So having such respectful and thoughtful manners makes stronger interpersonal relationships also. In addition to these strengthened moral values, fasting also makes social bonds better among community members by increasing the level of empathy and philanthropy. Actually, if people do not suffer hunger, it's nearly impossible for them to be really deeply empathetic about people in need. With fasting, we can perceive the pain of hunger and poverty and to what extent the poor need care. So it increases our social awareness and kind of feeling of philanthropy and social justice. Lastly, I want to briefly mention about the community building function of Ramadan. As you mentioned about before, we cannot feel in the same way before, but it's still thanks to these kind of virtual events, we are trying to feel connected with diverse populations. Before that, as most of us experience, iftar dinners can become a great platform to gathering and celebrate diversity. Also, Tarawih prayers are great tools for community building among Muslims. So these are my thoughts and sharings. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. As I shift to the screen again, I'm just going to go back into the program. And so imagine in your mind's eye, lentil soup later, rice, salad of your choice, drumsticks, oven-baked vegetables, and apple dessert. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? We'll have to wait till next year. Okay. And then if we look at our wonderful climate panel, and that we begin with our illustrious Marianne, Eschker. And what we're going to do, and then followed by Muaz, Nasir, and Michelle Singh. So I'm going to be Marianne's grip as she has wonderful slides to share. 1 second. Stop sharing. And so Marianne, do you want to maybe just say an introduction to yourself again and your passion about your wonderful topic, and then I can move us to the slide. Just let me know when you want that. Okay.
So I mentioned before, I'm a member of Manor Road United Church, and we started up a green team last year, just feeling like we had to do something. We needed to do something. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that today. I think what started it for me was that last year when the government started talking about banning single-use plastics, all the water bottles and stir sticks and food containers and cutlery. And around that time, we were starting to see a lot of pictures on the internet of animals with bellies full of plastic and animals with plastic wrapped around their bodies, and beaches and oceans full of plastics and things that we weren't seeing, like microplastics. So we launched our green team, and our first goal was to limit our single-use plastics at church, with another goal of encouraging people who came into our building to choose reusable over disposable. So we reached deep into our kitchen cupboards at church and pulled out all of our plastics that we weren't really using anymore because we were using real things, and we got rid of them. We donated them so that we weren't tempted to use them and keep buying more. And then from there, we decided to do more. We already had a cutlery borrowing program in place. So if you've got a party for 120 people, we've got you covered. You can borrow our cutlery. We also contacted a company called Carbon Neutral Shredding, and they will show up with their waste vegetable oil powered truck and take all of the disposable coffee cups that we've been collecting and separate them so that they can be recycled. We also started a recycling hub at our church. So we collect things like coffee cups, cartridges for ink and toner, pens and markers and crayons, women's intimate apparel and eyeglasses. So things that can be recycled, but also could be handed off to people who can use them. From there, we started to look at our building. Our building is 95 years old, and we were thinking about what we could do. So could we do solar panels? Could we do a green roof? And the answer to that was no, not yet. But we could do things like look at efficient light bulbs or timers. We could look at our weatherproofing. And one big project we're in the middle of right now is to replace our massive and old boiler with a higher efficiency model. And we got our kids involved, and they created signs that went on light switches, and they created eco crafts. And then when we met again, we talked about what we could do beyond just our sanctuary space, beyond our building. So we went back to our kids who, sorry, John Joseph, you can go through any of the slides anytime now.
Oh, okay, sorry, okay.
Sorry, I'm on a roll. I wasn't even thinking of it.
No, it's no problem. Let me get to the slides.
Yeah.
And 1 second. And hold on. Oh, okay, so that was the, okay.
So this is Ian, well, the next slide is Ian from Carbon Neutral Shredding. He's showing how he puts his cups and they get shredded and then they can be recycled because they're lined with plastic and can't be recycled otherwise. So if you want to head to the next slide. This is my lovely daughter. So we took old moving boxes and we created protest signs, things like no nature, no future, don't let your world go down the toilet, sorry, I can't clean my bedroom, I have to save the world, our house is on fire, hands off our forests. And we took these signs, and on very cold days, we went down to Queen's Park for the Friday with Future rallies, where we sang and we marched and we chanted with our kids. And one thing we were looking at as well was hosting a repair cafe. There's an organization that gathers volunteers who all have an expertise in some area. So it might be that you have a broken appliance, it might be that you have torn clothing, and you invite the community to come in to get their items repaired rather than being thrown out. Our first repair cafe was going to be a bike repair cafe to get people ready for some recycling. But then a global pandemic hit and everything just screeched to a halt. And we focused instead on mastering Zoom calls, and we focused on making masks, and we focused on making sure that those who are vulnerable in our community had support. But we also rushed out to buy bottles of hand sanitizer and plastic gloves and face masks and disposable wipes, and it leaves me thinking, where do we go next? Especially if you look at the next slide, on the news has been the new letter, that's Repair Cafe, so that's what we were going to do, hoping to do. And if you move to the next slide, there's a lot of images that have been online about the kind of litter that's being left behind now as people are really concerned with their own safety. So I would say there's been some lovely images too that we've seen about how our environment, as we're all isolating, has been able to kind of catch its breath. And we see clear canals in Venice, and we see people who are normally shrouded in pollution we're able to see much further out. And I'm hoping that we can take some of these positive signs and turn them into something that we can work with. And I don't think that a global pandemic is the best way to achieve any sort of long-term success for the environment, but I think it's a start. And just recently, actually, the Minister of the Environment was making an announcement about the environmental promises that the government made and how they're going to be delayed. Obviously, there's other things that they're focusing on. And my hope is that ban on single-use plastics will be a short delay, and that we can use this time to figure out how we can emerge from this isolation to do better. And so if you look at the last slide, this is me telling my kids to go gather all of the reusable things we have at home, so that we're not tempted to go out and keep buying single-use plastics, so that there's a better future for them, a better future for our environment. Thanks, John Joseph.
All right, thank you, thank you. Now what we're going to do is hear from each panelist, and then we'll save our questions for the end. So just write your thoughts down, and we'll back up, and we'll go to our illustrious Muaz Nasir, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen so we can see your wonderful face. Okay, and just to remind everybody, if you put your computer on speaker view, you get to see the speaker large and wide in the center. Just test that out, and it's quite lovely. So over to you, Wes.
Thank you, John. So I just want to first thank you for inviting me to discuss this evening. I mean, this is, as Marianne said, is a very timely topic. Climate change is something that's sort of been on the forefront of everyone's mind. I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, it's really picked up in the last couple of months with the climate marches that have taken place across the world. But when we take a step back and we look at it, because this is an interfaith event from the Islamic perspective, within the faith itself, if we just take a little historical perspective, environment and nature is something that's sort of been intertwined within Islam since its very inception. If you look back within the scriptures itself, around 750 verses within the Quran itself, which is just under 1/8 of the book, refer to natural phenomenon, which sort of gives the impression that environment has always been central to Islamic thought. And we go through sort of the life span of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there were many references where he sort of, reinforced the environmental message of conservation and sustainability. There was one reference where he says, even if you are next to a gushing stream, do not waste water. And that's something that ties into very well with the 7 generations principle that we see within the First Nations community, is that even if you do have a bountiful resource next to you, you have to be conscious of, first of all, not wasting it, but second of all, considering what's the impact of future generations. Just because something is bountiful to you right now, you want to ensure that it's there for future generations, that they can take part and benefit from those resources in the future as well. Within the Quran, there's very clear references on sort of human responsibility over the planet and its resources. And within the Quran, in chapter 6, there's a reference where God says that He's made you successors over the planet, and He's raised you above others in rank, just so that you can be aware of, and He tests you and how you are going to be responsible stewards of the environment. So when you take a step back and we look at climate change, unfortunately, is something that will impact the developing world more so than it will affect us here in North America. If you look at, for example, the rising sea levels, low-lying countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, and the Maldives have already faced issues of flooding, and we know in the next 50 years we're going to see a huge mass migration of people from low-lying areas into other parts of the world. So the term climate refugees is something that's been thrown around, and it's something that we within the developed world is something that we're going to have to take stock of and address in the future. Similarly, if you look across Islamic countries, the Horn of Africa, across the Middle East, right now they're also facing, heat waves, which is something that's happened in the past, but the severity and the intensity of the heat waves are now something that, is affecting everyone in a day-to-day basis. So, I mean, within the Islamic texts, as well as within the Islamic world, I think a lot of Muslims are very in tune with what's been going on. The next step is now, I guess, what sort of action is being taken, and what action can we do within the interfaith community when it comes to promoting and raising awareness of environmental stewardship within our communities. A few years back, some international development organizations, the IDRF, as well as Green Faith, and a couple of other organizations, the Global Muslim Climate Network, came together to address this issue right before the Paris Climate Summit. And what they came up was the Islamic Declaration on Climate Change, where they called upon Muslims across the world, as well as governments within Muslim countries, to kind of take heed of the warnings that are just sort of on the horizon, to sort of implement policies and conservation mechanisms in place, just to ensure that, the resources that we have now, we want to ensure that they're there for future generations, and that it's up to us now to take steps to ensure that, we're not sort of limiting ourselves in the future when it comes to what world we want our children to live in. Like we know right now that the extinction rate of animals across the world is at astronomical proportions. We know we're using resources at an unsustainable rate. It's up to us as humanity to take steps, and even simple steps within your own individual lives collectively can have a huge impact when it comes to the environment. So one of the things that we've done at Calipha is that once a year we have what's called the Green Kuppah campaign. And it's sort of the Friday sermon before Earth Day. We ask mosques across the world to devote that one sermon to the environment. And we provide them with resources on sample kuppahs, independently variable facts that they can use if they want to construct their own sermons as well. And this was sort of 10 years ago within the GTA, and it's sort of gone viral. So within the first year, we sort of developed it as a pilot. This was back in probably 2011, 2012. And from there, it sort of ballooned across, Europe, South Africa, across Southeast Asia, where mosques are taking this message. And every year we sort of devote it to a different theme, whether it's water conservation or climate change or conservation. And they've sort of run with it themselves. And it's sort of been great to see that, every mosque and every community has their own sort of niche sort of culture. And they've taken the message and adapted it to what works best for them. So for example, in Indonesia, were mosques that for the Green Kuppah campaign, they would go out after the sermon and do a tree planting initiative. There were mosques across the UK that after the Green Kuppah, the local youth would organize a garbage collection cleanup within the neighborhood around the mosque as well. So, I mean, there's steps that, Muslims have been taking over the last little while. And I think that, especially in the last year, with what's been going on with the climate marches, I've been seeing within the Greater Toronto area 2 other organizations that have sort of established themselves to sort of raise awareness, to sort of promote sustainability and conservation, and sort of take a civic action perspective when it comes to, what can governments do, what can local municipalities do in terms of, promoting and preaching sustainability. I know in the last couple of months with the COVID, the mantra has changed a little bit just because everyone has been on emergency preparedness, but I think this is something that'll stick. And in this post-global COVID environment, I think a lot of people are taking stock on what is actually really essential in their lives. I think this has given us an opportunity to slow down and see what really matters. I mean, consumerism is something that's sort of been with us and sort of been promoted to us at an unsustainable rate. But when you actually boil it down at the end of the day, what are the real essentials do we really need in our lives? I mean, family and community is one of the things that I think everyone on this call probably would agree is one of the most important things. Like, we don't need to consume things to be happy, right? You have to take stock of what's around you. Family is essential, community is essential, and faith is essential. So with that, I'll leave it there. And then I'm sure during the questions and answers, we can kind of delve in a little bit more.
Thank you, Halil. Thank you. And just to slide back to our program. Then we come to Reverend Michelle Singh, who will bring to us insight from her corner as the Executive Director of Faith in the Common Good. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, John Joseph. Good evening again, everyone. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I'll introduce you to Faith in the Common Good at a high level. Talk a bit about the work that we're doing across Canada, and then talk about climate change from the perspective of people of faith and the impact that we can have, and share with you one of the tools that we use in our network. Faith in the Common Good is a national interfaith network. We're 20 years old now, and we were founded on the belief that our diverse faith congregations and spiritual communities can be powerful role models for the common good. Our intention is to harness the power of diverse faith and spiritual groups through education, capacity building, and collective action to build more resilient and sustainable communities across Canada. We work with environmental, municipal, Indigenous, and community partners across the country. And we host a wide variety of practical, educational, and spiritual programs that encourage everything from faith building, energy efficiency, the repurposing of surplus places of worship, interfaith climate justice, clean water alliances, increased support for climate vulnerable neighbors. Our span of programs includes things like greening sacred spaces, Faithful Footprints, which is an initiative with the United Church that we've been working on, cultivating care for our common home, and the global Catholic climate movement. We're also engaged in extreme weather hubs across the southern GTHA in particular. I want to share with you a quote from James Spieth, or Speth. I'm actually not sure how to pronounce his last name. He's the former dean of the Yale School of Forestry and the US Presidential Climate Advisor, or one of the climate advisors in the past, I suppose. He said, "I used to think that if we threw enough good science at the environmental problems, we could solve them. I was wrong. The main threats to the environment are not biodiversity loss, pollution, and climate change as I once thought. They are selfishness and greed and pride. And for that, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation, something scientists don't know much about." So I know sometimes when people hear that quote, they're surprised and perhaps even a little bit concerned. What I hear in that quote is opportunity, particularly for faith leaders and for people of faith to really look at climate change as a moral and spiritual issue that is causing unprecedented harm to creation and people. We have an opportunity to raise our voices and take a leadership role in speaking about what the issues are, addressing them in our local communities. And I'm so glad that Muaz spoke about what's happening globally, because it's important for all of us to be aware of the impact, not only locally, but internationally. Through faith leadership, we have an opportunity to connect our teachings and our values with the actions that we are actually taking in our day-to-day lives. Marianne shared quite a bit about that, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there. But one of the things I wanted to talk about are the various ways that people of faith are sometimes inspired to act on climate issues, because it really encompasses so many different levels of action. Peacemaking. Muaz talked a little bit about this, the ways in which climate change is starting to has been sowing conflict over scarce resources. Poverty, having access to food, having access to health resources, the impact of racism in terms of climate injustice, racial disparities in childhood asthma rates, or in equitable response to disaster that occurs when communities of color are the primary victims. We're seeing that, actually all of these playing out right now as we are responding to COVID. Another aspect is caring for the next generation. Nothing threatens our children's well-being more than an unstable climate. I can't reiterate that enough. Yes, we are in this pandemic right now. However, climate change is, if you imagine that it is the largest issue that our children are going to have to deal with moving forward. I think one of the things that I've been hearing a lot of these days, particularly as we've all been in isolation and separated somewhat from the natural world, is the realization of just how much the connection to being in the forest, being by the water, being able to be outside, it's almost as though we're starving for it. And so it's an opportunity for faith communities to think about how we incorporate that into that longing. How do we incorporate that longing into our practices, not just our sermons, but in our actions? Marianne talked about our actions, but also in our experience and in our spiritual teachings. One of the things I wanted to share with you, is our green rule poster that was designed based on the golden rule poster that was created by Paul McKenna and Scarborough Missions. As I was thinking about this, actually, I know our theme for this evening is one leaf, many trees. Well, our green rule poster is one tree, many leaves. And it's a great tool for teaching the ways in which diverse faith communities care for creation. And it also expresses our unity in diversity. It includes 15 or 16 different faith communities. And for example, each leaf represents a different faith tradition. something that is significant to the faith that it represents. So to Hindus, for example, the banyan tree represents fertility, love, and life, and it's believed to be home to the holy trinity of Hindu gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. In Buddhism, Buddha found enlightenment while meditating under the Bodhi trees. And you'll find that Bodhi trees are found next to Buddhist temples throughout Asia. The representation of Islam is a palm tree, a leaf from a palm tree. It's believed that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was said to have compared a good Muslim to a palm tree, and stated that planting such a tree was a satisfactory substitute for alms. Trees have long been sacred to people. Our forests served as humanity's first places of worship, and they still evoke a sense of the divine. For me personally, it is one of the places that I feel most connected to creation. And it is one of the places that most inspires me to take action, not only at an individual and personal level, but also ensure that I align myself and the organization with other organizations that have that kind of commitment. To ensure that all of our values are working towards making the kind of change that we need to see in the world. I think I'll end with that, John Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very insightful. So what I'm going to do is, if people would like to speak, we'll ask you to enter your name in the chat, and then we'll have a bit of Q&A for about 5 minutes. And so if you'd like to ask a question, if you could pose it in the chat. And for those of you who may not understand what the chat is, it should be at the bottom of your screen, and everyone has a menu, and it sort of looks like a cartoon conversation mode. And any questions? We've all taken it in. We're ruminating, isn't that? There you go. Quite wonderful. Well, I would say it would be interesting to. It's good to have these panels, but to take it further down the road and to continue the conversation. So I would imagine a conversation, maybe a bit of a triumvirate between Michelle, Muaz, and Marianne at a later time. And is that something you might be interested to pursue? Okay, and to see where we can sort of bring together. I like the image of many leaves, one tree. I think that's as you see behind me, a tree. I'm very much a tree person. I think trees really speak to who we are, and many cultures still believe we talk to them. And so I'm going to take it over to.
It looks like Vivian has a question there.
Okay, I missed that. Okay, Vivian, where are you? Vivian, you wanted to ask your question?
Yeah, well, it's actually not really a question. It's more like a comment. And
okay.
Michelle, I love that idea too, with the one tree and many leaves. And I think it really also speaks to, the reality of interfaith work. That we, even though we're all different, we're working towards one or a few common goods together. And I also really like the idea of the repair cafe that was shared before. And I think that really helps people who, some people who don't know how to do repairs, or who are not able to afford to pay for repairs, to help those people to really contribute to the climate change and help them to do what they can, to live in this, world that we're trying to, continue to have a create a safe world for all of us and to love the creation.
Well, thank you, Vivian. And so we had also the. Sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking John Joseph. I think for things like that, like Repair Cafe and things that they're doing, I think it might be helpful to share it with many other people. I know it's is it something from your church? So I think it may.
Oh, the Repair Cafe. Well, it's not singular to us. It's a movement in Toronto. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So even
but definitely spread the idea. Definitely, yes.
Yeah. Even to share with the nice participants, that would be great.
And so we have a thank you from John Ryerson and also Suzi Morris, and your question jumped up for a second. And Suzi, you just want to pose your question right now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wondering what the panelists feel is the best way. You know, I think we're all experiencing this shift post-COVID-19. What is the most practical way of harnessing people's attention and energy to make that shift on a local level as well as a broader level?
Okay, do you want that asked to all the panelists or one particular one?
All of them.
Okay, all of them, okay. Well, we start with you, Michelle.
Thank you. I just got to notice that my connection is unstable. So if I cut out, that's what's happening.
Okay.
I really appreciate this question, particularly because it's a very big conversation right now. I think one of the ways we make the connection in people's minds, it's actually simple and subtle. And someone mentioned it earlier. It's the little things like sharing the images of dolphins floating through Venice now. The clean skies that in, oh, I forget where it is, but the mountains that can be seen now because the sky has cleared, that the pollution is being diminished, so that asthma is, I think the levels of asthma cases are going down a little bit. It's making the connection between climate, our health, and the actions that we take. People are starting to experience that, I think, at a visceral level now. And you know, there's a whole movement out there that says that the earth is, you know, put us all in a bit of a time out because we weren't paying attention to the floods and the fires and everything else that was happening. And just to John's comment about the economy versus climate, that old debate, what we're learning is that we cannot continue that versus conversation. Climate is having an extreme impact on our economies globally. Insurance rates are climbing as a result of floods and fires and what have you. It's a mind shift. We're in this, one of the blessings or the benefits of this pandemic is that it's giving us an opportunity to stop, to pay attention, to listen, and shift. That same thing that Gus Spieth was talking about, to shift our perspective, to make different choices. And it's, in my experience, it's just a more intensive time for that right now. And I think people, not everyone for sure, but a significant portion of the population is getting that message.
Thank you. How about we hear from Muaz? Muaz, can we hear from you?
Sorry, I was trying to mute myself.
Okay.
So I just want to bring it, down, I guess, to the local level. We were talking a little bit about the repair culture that's coming into place. A lot, I guess the silver lining with people being stuck in their homes is that they can't just go out and buy new things if something breaks, right? You're kind of forced to kind of repair, if your lawnmower breaks, if your clothing, gets a hole. People are sort of picking up the skills that they may have lost over the last generation or so, when it was just easier to toss it out and to purchase something new. So I think that's one of the silver linings that'll kind of carry forward, is that people are seeing in value of picking up these basic skills again, whether it's baking at home, whether it's learning to sew, whether it's just learning basic, tinkering tools with their mechanics in their home. I think that's something that'll kind of carry forward in this sort of post-COVID economy. And then the other thing that I've sort of noticed is that while people are sort of forced to be at home, is that they're exploring their neighborhoods more now. There's this concept called nature deficit disorder, which is sort of a pandemic amongst the younger generations where they're sort of glued to their screens. I think people are actually going out and exploring their, local ravines, their local neighborhoods, and seeing the value and reinforcing the value of their connection with nature. So I think that's something that'll carry forward. And I know, the lure of this screen is something that's always going to be there. But I think that when people will look back at this time is that, we spent more time outside, we spent more time, walking and exploring our neighborhoods and, making connections with our neighbors. So when you sort of bring that back to the whole climate discussion, I think people are going to hopefully take that a simpler approach to life, that we overly complicate a lot of things that sort of aggravate ourselves on a daily basis. Even working from home, I think the world will change now just because it's seen as a viable alternative. People are not going to be spending 2 hours commuting each way to work, which emits emissions of sulfur and nitrous dioxides into the air. I mean, I think this is a new paradigm shift that will carry forward into the future, and everyone is sort of wishful that, when can we go back to the way things were? But I don't think that'll happen. I think we sort of moved along over the last 2 months that people won't be going back to what they were doing before. And I think that'll benefit the climate as a whole going forward, where, we're more conscientious in what we do, and the impacts that it has on our local community as well as, the global economy as well.
Thank you. And over to you, Marianne, to weigh in on this wonderful question.
It made me think. I worked for many summers on an island in Temagami, which is about 5 hours north of Toronto. And every summer I went up, I brought less and less because I needed less and less. And my hope is as we come out of this isolation, we realize we didn't need as much. We didn't need to be shopping all the time, and that we're happier with what we have. In our neighborhood on Facebook, people are sharing sourdough starters. There's a woman they're her babies, and you bring her a jar and she's given out, I don't know how many, maybe 100 jars to people. And I think people are doing what you said. They're learning that they can live without and that they can fix it themselves, they can create it themselves. And I hope that momentum keeps going.
Well, thank you. I'm going to just take note of the questions. I'm going to honor our time because we're at 8:30. And I did take a photo of the questions, so I will share them later. And so I would invite our wonderful Imam Wael Shahab to bring us the call of prayer, as many Muslim brothers and sisters will be breaking the fast. So I'll unshare the screen and over you, Imam Wael. I don't see you.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Salam alaikum.
Thanks, John, for inviting me. Thanks for the thanks for the panelists for the wonderful, presentations you have made. You asked me for the to make the call of the prayer. Just before giving it a note, today's time for Maghrib is 8:44. So the fasting brothers and sisters should wait until the correct time for the Maghrib, the sunset, because the sunset is not due yet. So everyone, please, those who are fasting, wait until the actual time of sunset in Toronto. Sunset today is at 4:44. So I will make the call to prayer, though we still have a few minutes before breaking the fast. Okay? Thank you. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we bring our time to a close, may we hear from our musician, Nay, as he brings that wonderful, very spiritual, mystical music of the Sufi tradition. Over to Nay.
Ahmet Hocam müziği oynatabilirsiniz. Ne çalabilirsiniz?